We were very frustrated with the search effort, and we were just trying to do whatever we could.
There was nothing else to do but to go look for Mom and
Mike and Jeff Jones have a problem. On April 16th, 1979, they reported their mother, Harriet Simmons, missing. The day before, Harriet had climbed into her car in Raleigh, North Carolina for a weekend road trip to Nashville. The drive should have taken 8 hours. 5 days later, she still has not arrived.
It was totally out of character for a mom not to call, when we knew she would, because her kids, were her life. And she would never go that long and not be in touch with them.
Ronnie Dement is Harriet's son-in-law. He joins the search and begins to retrace the route she would have taken to Nashville. After 2.5 hours of driving, he finds Simmons' car, parked in the exit ramp leading out of a rest stop. Inside the car, police find that Simmons' keys and purse are missing. In the back sits a flat tire, an indication that Harriet might have had car trouble and perhaps had asked a stranger for help. Without a body and with no prints or other usable evidence from inside the car, the investigation into Harriet Simmons' disappearance quickly goes nowhere. 11 months pass, and then the other shoe drops. Simmons' disappearance matures into an undeniable case of murder.
I got the call around mid-morning that a passing motorist had found a skull in the woods.
Mike Wright is a crime scene investigator for the Buncombe County Sheriff, 260 miles out of Raleigh. He heads into a patch of woods just off the Blue Ridge Parkway.
The skull had been moved from the location of the rest of the bones probably by animal activity. And so we did a grid search of the surrounding area and then located articles of clothing and additional bones and evidence in the leaves.
Medical examiner Dr. John Butts determines the victim to be a white female between 45 and 55 years old. He notes 4 cuts in the victim's clothing and 4 nearly identical cuts in the victim's bones. Within a week, state investigators provide dental records on a missing woman. Dr. Butts compares the records to the Jane Doe and determines that she is Harriet Simmons. The discovery of a body moved Simmons' case from a disappearance to an unsolved homicide. The result, however, is the same. No suspects and no leads in the investigation. Meanwhile, a second body turns up, 18 miles from the Blue Ridge Parkway in Asheville, North Carolina.
I was at home, and it was around 4 o'clock in the morning, and the dispatcher called and said that a body had been located.
As sunrise creeps up the back of the Smoky Mountains, CSI Mike Wright takes another call for another body, this time on the banks of the French Broad River.
And she had been stabbed to the chest, and a local resident here had heard her call for help when she had crawled up out of the water, and he had attempted to give CPR.
The neighbor tells police that the girl died in his arms. The victim carries no ID and has suffered multiple stab wounds. Even as CSI works the scene, a second call comes in about a car found 8 miles upstream.
City police officers initially found the car. They had been contacted by Southern Railway dispatcher. The train crew had seen the car while the train was crossing this trestle here, and the vehicle was in the river about 20 feet off the shore, upriver from the bridge. And the car was partially submerged about 20 feet off the bank.
Police wonder if the vehicle is related to the murder downstream. They track the license plates to a local family and a woman named Margaret McConnell.
They said that they had found the car in the river, and they explained what had happened. Then they asked some of the family to come downtown.
Margaret McConnell tells police that her 21-year-old daughter, Betty Sue, had taken the car to work earlier that evening and never came home. 2 hours later, Betty Sue McConnell is ID'd as the murder victim. While a team of detectives begins eliminating suspects, police process the victim's car. A forensic examination of the vehicle yields no prints, no blood. Nothing in the way of a lead. After 3 months of legwork, detectives are resigned to their luck. Betty Sue McConnell's case joins Harriet Simmons in the cold files, where both will stay for 19 years. In Asheville, North Carolina, Jerry Harmon is known as the Smoky Mountain Gypsy, a keeper of the Appalachian oral history, a singer and songwriter. For 19 years, Harmon has held a close secret, one kept at bay by a combination of fear and booze.
I sat him down in my office and he began talking about a case from 1979.
As Buncombe County Sheriff's Captain Pat Hefner listens, Jerry Harmon begins to talk about a night 19 years past. In August of 1979, Jerry Harmon is 19 years old and hanging out with a new pal, 22-year-old Terry Hyatt. At 2:30 a.m., the two men leave a bar and get into Hyatt's truck.
There was a young lady pulled up on the driver's side at a traffic light, and Terry made an obscene gesture towards her, and then when she turned to the left, he ran her off the road. And then he jumped out and ran up to her car and jerked the door open and yelled back at me and said, "Follow me." And he jumped in her car and took off.
Harmon follows behind Terry Hyatt, who drives a few miles and then turns down a dirt road.
And then he got the girl out of the car, came back to the truck, got into the truck with her, and I got away from there, and it was obvious what was going on. He was raping this young lady.
Hyatt pulls the girl out of the car and begins walking towards the water.
And then I heard this girl screaming, and it was, I assumed he was raping her again or something, I mean, that's what I figured was going on. And he came back up there. And then it dawned on me. I didn't hear the girl anymore. And I said, "You killed that girl, didn't you?" And then he told me, yeah, he had.
Hyatt drives the girl's car a few miles upstream and runs it into the river. For 19 years, Harmon never breathed a word. Now he tells it all to Pat Hefner, including the place where the woman's car was dumped, the French Broad River. Harmon then provides detectives with a second name.
He had mentioned that if we really wanted to verify his story, we needed to talk to Mr. Hyatt's best friend at the time, which was Lester Dean Helms.
2 months later, Ann Benjamin tracks Lester Helms to a nursing home. She and Tim Shook head over for a chat.
And when we ask him to relate what he recalls, he starts talking about a lady with a flat tire being abducted along the interstate.
And I was taking notes and really didn't, I thought, what is he talking about,
While Helms is talking about murder, it does not appear to be the same murder Jerry Harmon shared with police. In Helms' statement, Terry Hyatt raped a woman and killed her, and then dumped her body in Buncombe County, some 18 miles from where Betty Sue McConnell's body was found.
As we're walking out to the car, I remember turning to Tim and saying, "What was that all about?" And he says, "I think I know."
I had read the file and it began to click. That sounds like the Harriet Simmons murder, because her skeletal remains had been found in Buncombe County up near the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Like McConnell, Harriet Simmons was abducted from her car. Like McConnell, Simmons was stabbed multiple times.
It had never been associated in any way with Betty Sue McConnell's abduction and subsequent murder. And we were both quite excited. We knew we had some good information and some good witnesses.
Warrants are issued and police descend on Terry Hyatt's home in Asheville. Hyatt lawyers up and is arrested. On January 31st, 2000, a jury finds Hyatt guilty on all counts.
Terry Alvin Hyatt to be put to death as by law provided.
He is sentenced to die by lethal injection. In February of 2000, while Terry Hyatt sits on death row, His DNA is collected and entered into the state DNA data bank. There, it hits on yet another unsolved case: the 1987 rape and murder of a Charlotte woman named Jerry Ann Jones. When presented with the DNA evidence and a deal to avoid another death sentence, Terry Hyatt confesses to Charlotte authorities. On August 2, 2005, Hyatt pleads guilty to the murder of Jerry Jones.